I don't give anyone a look like my own
Well, my name's Marianne from SAFE, as you can see on my label. And I'm really pleased to welcome you all here today for the launch of our new resource, Animal Rights, Human Values and Social Action, which is the second in the series of the Animals in Us resources for New Zealand educators. I'll get started by introducing our first speaker, Geoffrey Masson. He's the author of 8 books about animals, including the bestseller When Elephants Weep, that's been translated into 20 languages. He's also about to launch a new book, The Face on Your Plate, The Truth About Food, and that's looking at vegetarianism and veganism. So that's a great thing to read on. And also thank you for writing the foreword for our new resource. So Geoffrey, hand over to you.
First, I want to just say to Nicola that this is an amazing book. It's extraordinary. I don't think there's anything like this anywhere else in the world. And that's extraordinary when you think about it. This is the first time that something like this has been produced for schools, and to see that schools are allowing it. First one is why it's important to support school programs. And I want to say to that when children learn about compassion in the broadest sense, not just about them or their family or their community, but for other species, it often resonates with something they already know, but have rarely found an adult to share this with. So I think if they learn this in a school, it can be an enormous eye-opener. I want to say just a word about slavery, because I think that is something we do teach children, the history of slavery. And I think a wonderful thing to do when you talk about the history of slavery is ask the children, well, do you think it's really different with animals? Are animals to a certain extent slaves? And if they're not, how are they different? And if they are, how are they? And what are the implications of that? So that is a fairly new topic within animal rights. I mean, it goes back a long way, of course, because almost everybody who's ever been interested in animals, people often accuse all of us, most of us here in this room, well, you care more about animals than you do about people, but there's no logical reason to say that, because usually people who care about animals do so because they've come to it from caring about people. They start with children, and that's the origins of the Humane Society and the SPCA in England, and they care about social issues like social justice and feminism and racism. I think there's certain things you can learn from animals that you possibly cannot learn from other humans, at least in a school. And one of those is, and I'm really sorry now, at the last time I talked was at the SPCA, and Bob said, sorry, you can't bring your wonderful dog. And that's terrible. You should always be able to bring your dog, because he says he's a therapy dog. He's a failed guide dog. And he just loved this, and you would have loved him. And I think that animals like that, whenever kids see him, they rush over to him. And I think children learn certain things from animals, such as devotion and unconditional love. Not, how were you today? Doesn't matter, the dog. And that idea of being happy to see you. I never understood that. I saw it again today. I forgot these glasses when I left, so I ran back to the house, and Benji came out like, "You're back! Oh my God! You've seen the light, you've come back to live with the pack." He looked disappointed when I left. So, I mean, dogs they are different from us in interesting and profound ways. And you can only know that by living with them. What interests me right now is that there seems to be a tremendous interest in interspecies compassion in the wild. And I think the reason for this, it was not known. I remember when I first started writing, and I asked people, scientists, for examples, nobody had any. And they said, well, you'll never find that in the wild. And I wondered, well, is that true? How would they know? When was the last time they were in the wild observing thousands of species? But that was the moment for me when I realized actually seeing those chickens. I went out to a major chicken farm here. I don't know why they let me. And when you see that, it is so awful. And that in legal terms, it's not that it's cruel, but you realize, and you know, my son looked at it and said, oh my God, you know, he was 7 at the time, so I got to get out of here. It's just scary. It's thousands upon thousands of chickens. And you realize they have no purpose in life except to give these eggs so we can eat them. That's just not right. It just felt wrong. I can't eat it. But what you want to do, rather than brainwash, you want to give them information. And I can't think of any publication for schools that does that so brilliantly as yours, Nicola. So congratulations for that. And thank you all for coming. A real pleasure to see you all. And anything at all. I'm open to anything.
Okay, next up, Dr Phillip Armstrong. He is Associate Professor in English at Canterbury University, and he's also co-director of a sort of world first called the New Zealand Centre for Human Animal Studies.
And you're probably familiar with the Vitruvian Man, you know, Leonardo da Vinci's very famous drawing, which is, if you like, sort of become a logo for this kind of humanist, anthropocentric idea. That is a way of thinking, a way of studying and teaching that puts human beings at the centre of things. The assumption that the most important thing you can do if you're studying English or social studies or history or whatever is to think about humans and humans alone. Human animal studies seeks to change that and instead to put animals and human-animal relationships at the centre of our concern. So in human animal studies we do sociology and we do English studies and we do film studies and philosophy, but we don't assume that only the life sciences, only biologists or only zoologists can talk about animals. And so instead of Vitruvian Man, we have a kind of Vitruvian hoo-hoo bug as our motto for the New Zealand Centre. And you'll notice that the hoo-hoo bug is actually about to crawl out of the circle and the square. It's not quite contained by the circle and the square. And I like this because this reminds us that animals, there's always more to animals than we can know about them. They're mobile, they're active, they have their own lives, they have their own interests, they have their own kinds of ways of doing things, and we can never really capture that. Values exploration is something that the curriculum makes a lot of. You know, that it's our job as educators to develop students' ability to form their own values, to reflect on their values, to understand the differences between their values and others, and so on. Human-animal relations provides a fantastic opportunity for this, I think, mainly because it's so familiar to all of us. You know, it's something that almost every student will come into school already aware of, as has already been said. And of course there are the links in terms of empathy that I've already talked about, ethical decision making, the processes by which we form our ethics and make decisions can be investigated very vividly and very effectively by looking at human-animal relationships. Finally, I think human-animal studies provides lots of opportunities for research and also for the presentation of students' research in the form of essays or oral presentations or whatever form it takes on issues that are very topical and very close to the hearts of the current generation of students in our schools and universities. Issues like globalisation, climate change, species and habitat loss, consumer culture, these are all issues that have at the centre of them how we relate to other species, how we relate to other beings, what kind of respect we have for or what kind of use we make of the non-human world below. So when you start to look at the human-animal relationship, it seems to be simply a sort of symbolic one in the book. You find that actually there's a whole history, there's a whole sociology of human-animal relationships behind it. There are ideas about care for the environment, care for animals, conservation, and all sorts of emotional and cultural links between humans and other animals. I just finished with that as an example of how I think human-animal studies can open new windows into the curriculum. The resource that Nicola's about to tell you about is full of wonderful examples that can be used in the same way.
Well, thank you very much. Everybody's been very kind and I do appreciate it. And it's very intimidating to follow such wonderful speakers as Jeffrey and Philip. But I'm very pleased and proud that you to have this, produce this for you, and thank you very much for taking the time to come in and learn about it and hear about what we're trying to do.